Prince Harry thought this would be a conversation. Alastair Campbell thought it would be an examination. No shouting, no insults. Just one question after another, until there was nowhere left to hide. The studio was quieter than Prince Harry had expected. No audience, no applause cues, no friendly chatter to soften the edges. Just two microphones, a low wooden table, and the faint hum of studio lights. The kind of room where words didn't echo, but stuck. Harry adjusted his jacket as he took his seat, glancing briefly at the glass of water beside him. He'd done dozens of interviews like this, podcasts, long-form conversations, spaces where he could finally tell his truth. Across from him sat Alastair Campbell, relaxed, almost casual. One hand rested near his notes, the other lightly touching the microphone stand. He wasn't smiling, but he wasn't frowning either. His expression suggested patience, the dangerous kind. "Thank you for doing this," Campbell began calmly. "I know you don't always feel the media gives you a fair hearing." Harry nodded, visibly easing. "That's an understatement. But conversations like this matter." "They do," Campbell replied, inclining his head, "especially when influence and responsibility are involved." Harry didn't catch it. Not yet. The opening minutes felt familiar, safe even. Campbell asked about Harry's life in California, about stepping away from royal duties, about the pressure of growing up in the public eye. Harry spoke smoothly and confidently. He talked about trauma, tabloid cruelty, and the suffocating weight of expectation. At times his voice softened. At others it sharpened, honed by years of repeating these stories, polishing them until they felt unassailable. Campbell listened. Truly listened. No interruptions, no raised eyebrows, no counterpoints, just silence after each answer. Harry filled it. "I didn't leave because I wanted attention," he said at one point. "I left because I wanted peace." Campbell nodded, jotting something down. "Peace?" he repeated quietly. "That's an interesting word." Harry smiled faintly. "It's an important one." Campbell leaned back slightly. "You've spoken often about stepping away from power from the institution." Harry's shoulders squared instinctively. "Yes, absolutely." "And yet," Campbell continued, his tone unchanged, "you remain one of the most influential public figures in the world." Harry paused. "Well, public attention isn't something you can just turn off." "Of course," Campbell agreed. "But attention isn't the same as influence." Harry frowned. "Just a fraction." "You've written books, given interviews, released documentaries, all of which shape public opinion about the monarchy, the media, even British society itself." Harry shifted in his chair. "That's not influence. That's telling my story." Campbell didn't argue. Instead, he asked softly, "Do you believe stories are neutral?" The question landed heavier than it sounded. "I believe stories can heal," Harry replied. "They can expose harm." "And can they harm?" A beat passed. Harry hesitated just long enough to be noticeable. "They can if they're dishonest." Campbell's pen stopped moving. "And who decides that?" Harry's jaw tightened. "People know the truth when they hear it." Campbell looked up, meeting Harry's eyes fully for the first time. "Do they, or do they recognize conviction?" The temperature in the room shifted, not dramatically, but subtly. Harry leaned forward, hands clasped. "I've lived this. I don't need to convince anyone. I know what happened to me." "I don't doubt your experience," Campbell said calmly. "I'm interested in what you do with it." Harry blinked. "What do you mean? You speak often about escaping the institution, about rejecting its power structures." Harry nodded, cautious now. "Yes, and yet," Campbell said, "you still speak as someone shaped by it. You frame your arguments with a moral authority derived from it." "That's unfair," Harry snapped. Campbell raised a hand not defensively, but to slow the moment. "I'm not accusing. I'm observing." Harry leaned back, crossing his arms. "Sometimes observation is accusation." Campbell smiled faintly, not amused, measured. "That's true, which is why clarity matters." Harry glanced toward the technician's booth, then back. "I came here to have a conversation, he said, "not to be psychoanalyzed." Campbell's reply was immediate. "And I came here to understand how power speaks when it claims to have renounced itself." Silence followed, not awkward, not hostile, just exposed. Harry uncrossed his arms. "You're twisting my words," he said. Campbell shook his head slowly. "I haven't touched them yet." Harry swallowed. The microphones captured everything. A breath, a shift, a crack barely visible but real, and for the first time since the conversation began, Prince Harry looked less like a guest and more like someone being examined. The silence stretched just long enough to become uncomfortable. Harry shifted in his chair again, this time less subtly. His fingers tapped once against the table before he caught himself and folded his hands together. He was used to interviews turning tense, but not like this. Not with raised voices or headlines thrown like weapons. This was different. Alastair Campbell hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't challenged Harry's truth outright. He hadn't even contradicted him. He had simply waited. "Let me be clear," Campbell said at last. His voice measured. "I'm not questioning your pain." Harry nodded quickly. "Good. I'm questioning the function of that pain in public discourse." Harry frowned. "What does that even mean?" Campbell leaned forward slightly, elbows resting on the arms of his chair. "You speak about trauma," he said, "and you speak about accountability often in the same breath." Harry straightened. "As I should. Possibly," Campbell replied, "but accountability usually runs in two directions." Harry's eyes narrowed. "I've taken responsibility for my decisions." "Have you?" Campbell asked calmly. Harry opened his mouth and paused. "Yes." "I walked away. I gave up titles. I gave up protection. I paid a price." Campbell nodded as if noting a point rather than contesting it. "And yet you continue to shape narratives about people who cannot respond." "My family can respond whenever they like," Harry snapped. Campbell didn't push back immediately. Instead, he asked, "Do you believe silence is always a choice?" The question landed heavily. Harry hesitated. "In their position, yes. So when a powerful institution chooses silence, it's strategy," Campbell said softly. "And when an individual speaks publicly, repeatedly, globally, it's truth." Harry's jaw tightened. "You're framing this unfairly." "I'm framing it symmetrically." Harry leaned forward, forearms on his knees. "Let's stop pretending this is neutral. You've advised governments. You know how power works." Campbell smiled faintly. "Exactly. So don't act like I'm the one wielding it." Campbell waited until Harry finished, until the words stopped echoing in the room. Then he spoke quietly. "Power isn't only institutional. It's reputational, emotional, narrative. You're making it sound like I'm manipulating people. I'm saying stories persuade, even when they're sincere." Harry exhaled sharply. "I never wanted persuasion. I wanted understanding." "And you got it," Campbell replied, "in abundance." Harry blinked. "Did I? For millions." The air felt thicker now. Harry leaned back and crossed his arms again, but this time it looked defensive, not reflective. "So what's the accusation?" he asked. "That I should have stayed silent?" "No," Campbell said. "That you should recognize the weight of your voice." Harry laughed once, short and humorless. "That's rich coming from you." "I've spent much of my career trying to reduce the damage of powerful voices," Campbell replied. "Not always successfully." "At least you admit that." "Do you?" The question hung between them. "I don't regret telling my story." "That's not what I asked," Campbell said gently. "Do you regret anything about how it was told?" The studio seemed to shrink. Harry looked down briefly, then back up. "No," he said firmly, "because if I hadn't spoken, the truth would have been buried." Campbell raised an eyebrow. "Whose truth?" Harry's patience snapped just slightly. "My truth?" "The truth?" Campbell leaned back, folding his hands. "That's the moment narratives become dangerous, when personal truth declares itself universal." Harry shook his head. "You're splitting hairs." "No," Campbell replied. "I'm drawing lines." Harry leaned forward again, his voice rising for the first time. "You're implying I've done harm. I'm asking whether harm can exist without intent." Harry opened his mouth, then stopped. The answer didn't come immediately. That brief hesitation changed the room. Campbell noticed it. "So let me ask you this," he continued. "When people use your words to justify cynicism, division, or distrust, do you feel responsible?" Harry's face flushed slightly. "I can't control how people interpret things." "Governments say that too," Campbell replied. Harry shot him a sharp look. "That's not the same, isn't it?" Campbell asked quietly. The silence that followed was no longer polite. It was charged. Harry uncrossed his arms, rubbing his palms together as if grounding himself. "You came into this with an agenda," he said. Campbell nodded once. "Yes." Harry's eyes widened. "And it's not what you think." "My agenda is simple," Campbell said, leaning forward, "to understand whether walking away from power absolves someone from its consequences." "I didn't walk away to be absolved," Harry said. "I walked away to survive. And now you're asking the world to survive your story." Harry stood up abruptly, then forced himself back into his chair. The microphones caught his breath. "I'm done being dissected." Campbell didn't argue. He asked one final question, quiet and precise. "Then why do you keep coming back?" Harry froze. Not angry, not defensive. Just still. For the first time since the conversation began, he didn't answer. The silence didn't fade. It fractured. Harry half stood, then sat again, as if his body moved before his mind caught up. His jaw clenched. He looked past the camera, toward the producer's desk, the studio lights, anything but the man across from him. "Because people keep asking," he said at last. "Do they?" Campbell asked. "Or do you keep answering?" "That's unfair." "No accusations," Campbell said gently. "Just sequence." Harry leaned forward, gripping the edge of the table. "You're turning this into something it's not. This was supposed to be a conversation." "It is," Campbell replied. "Conversations become uncomfortable when they stop flattering us. You think I came here to be flattered. I think you came here expecting empathy." Harry let out a tight, brittle laugh. "And instead, I got cross-examination." "You got clarity," Campbell said. "That's often mistaken for hostility." "You're doing what the media always does, reframing, undermining." "The media amplifies," Campbell replied. "I'm asking you to own the amplification. I don't control the press. But you choose the platforms, and you choose the timing." Harry struck the table once, not hard, but enough. "You have no idea what it's like, growing up inside that system, being watched, controlled." "I know what it's like to watch systems implode," Campbell said. "Often because those inside them confuse exposure with resolution. So now you're saying I made things worse? I'm saying some wounds heal privately. Others fester when they're turned into spectacle. My life is not a spectacle. Then why does it require an audience?" The words landed like a slap. Harry pushed his chair back slightly. "This is exactly why people don't trust commentators like you," he said. "You sit outside judging." Campbell's voice sharpened for the first time. "And you sit inside a global platform insisting you're powerless." Harry's eyes widened. "That's not what I said." "It's what you imply," Campbell replied. "Victimhood and authority are not opposites, Harry. They can coexist." Harry stood up fully now. "This is crossing a line." "Which line?" Campbell asked. Campbell asked? Campbell asked. "The personal one or the public one?" Harry pointed toward the camera. "This ends now." Campbell glanced briefly at the producer, then back at Harry. "Before you go, answer one thing. You've asked enough. Just one. And not for me." Harry's shoulders tensed. "For the people watching," Campbell continued, "if telling your story has become painful, why not stop telling it?" Harry turned back, eyes blazing. "Because silence protects the powerful, and speech protects the speaker," Campbell replied. Then, pressing gently but decisively, "So which one are you protecting now?" The studio fell into a heavy, unbearable quiet. Harry's face flushed. His breathing was audible in the microphone. "That's it," he said. "You don't get to define my motives." "I didn't," Campbell replied. "I asked you to." Harry shook his head, backing away from the table. This was a setup. You invited me here to tear me apart. No, Campbell said calmly. I invited you to examine yourself. Harry reached for the earpiece, his fingers trembling slightly. I'm done. One last thing, Campbell said, and I won't follow up. Harry paused. Campbell's voice softened, but the words cut deeper than anything before. When history looks back on this period of your life, do you want to be remembered as someone who escaped the institution, or someone who never stopped fighting it from the outside? Harry froze. For a split second, something flickered across his face. Not anger, not indignation, but uncertainty. Then it vanished. That's not your call, Harry said coldly. He reached for the controls. The screen flickered. Audio spiked. And just before the connection cut, Campbell spoke one final sentence, quiet and unmistakable. History won't ask who was right, only who took responsibility. The feed went dark. The screen turned black. Not dramatically. No fade out, no music cue. Just black. For half a second no one spoke, then the red lav indicator blinked off. The studio didn't exhale. It froze. Alastair Campbell remained seated, hands folded loosely in front of him, eyes fixed on the empty monitor where Harry's face had been seconds earlier. No sigh, no shake of the head, just stillness. A producer's voice crackled through the headset. We've lost the connection. Campbell nodded once. Yes, he said quietly. We have. The camera was still rolling, no longer broadcasting, but recording. Campbell turned slightly toward it, not with triumph or irritation, but with something closer to resignation. That, he said carefully, is what disengagement looks like when conversation becomes accountability. He paused. No insults were exchanged, no shouting, no ambush. Another pause, just a question that couldn't be controlled. He leaned back in his chair. We'll leave it there. The producer cut the feed. Across the Atlantic, in a quiet room far from the studio lights, Prince Harry stood motionless, headphones still on, staring at his own reflection in the darkened screen. The call had ended, but the words hadn't. He pulled the headset off and dropped it onto the desk harder than necessary. Someone off camera spoke his name. He didn't respond. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, quietly, almost to himself, he said he knew exactly what he was doing. But even as he said it, the certainty wasn't there. Because part of him knew something else. Campbell hadn't attacked him. He hadn't mocked him. He hadn't dismissed his pain. He had simply refused to carry it for him. Within minutes, clips began circulating. Short ones at first. Why does it require an audience? Victimhood and authority can coexist. Which one are you protecting now? The reaction split instantly. Some called it cruel. Others called it overdue. Supporters accused Campbell of arrogance. Critics accused Campbell of arrogance. Critics accused Harry of running. But one thing was undeniable. People watched and then they re-watched. Media outlets raced to frame it. Prince Harry storms off podcast. Alastair Campbell pushes too far. When interviews turn into interrogations. But beneath the headlines, something more interesting happened. The tone shifted. Not toward outrage, but toward reflection. Viewers began asking questions that hadn't been asked before. Not about the monarchy. Not about betrayal. Not even about trauma. But about exit. When does telling your story become repeating it? When does explanation turn into performance? When does pain stop being truth and start becoming identity? Later that evening, Campbell released a single statement. No thread. No follow-up interviews. Just one paragraph. Conversation requires courage from both sides. Walking away is a choice, but it is also an answer. Harry, for his part, said nothing. No tweets. No statements. No clarifications. And in that silence, something unexpected happened. For the first time in a long while, the story didn't continue. It lingered unfinished, unresolved, and maybe, finally, honest. If this conversation made you uncomfortable, that's the point. If it made you think, that's the power of real dialogue. Like the video. If you believe tough questions still matter, subscribe for more stories where silence speaks louder than words. because sometimes the moment someone walks away is when the real story begins.